Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. Hey everyone, and welcome to Raising Parents, the Parenting Science Insights podcast, produced by Ella Massell, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm your host, Dina Sargeant. Let's get started.
Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode. Now, be of moral character is a term that I heard a lot from my family. It usually meant to be of a good part of society or maybe be helpful in the community. But how do we instill these values of a morally developed adult in adolescence? Now, our guest today may have some of the tools to help inspire our teenagers to find their role in society. Peg O'Connor, PhD, is a professor of philosophy at Gustavus Adolphus College at St. Peter, Minnesota. Her focus ranges from moral philosophy to addiction recovery and the philosophical viewpoint on addiction. Now, thank you so much for joining me today, Peg.
Oh, thank you for having me, Dina. I'm really looking forward to this.
Now, I love talking about this, and I think we were talking quite a bit before we started recording today in terms of the moral philosophy, especially when it comes to teenagers and how to build their own moral character and find their worth throughout their teenage years. And it's one of the difficult things that you sort of develop as a teenager that you sort of only figure out as you get older as to how important all of those moral development, all these moral characters and understanding of yourself is within society.
Oh, I think that's right. I think hindsight tends to be 20/20 when it comes to our moral development. And it's oftentimes only looking backwards that we realize those pivotal moments where we made a choice, where we decided to zig instead of zag. In the present, we can't often do that. So how do we think about equipping kids well to confront hard decisions? And some hard decisions are right there. There's no ignoring them. And other times it turns out that we make hard decisions over a period of time and we realize, wow, we have really done something that's quite huge, even though we weren't confronted in the same kind of way as one of those big ticket items.
Mhm. Now, when it comes to your career, why did you choose to go into philosophy and more importantly, the direction of moral character within philosophy?
I fell in love with philosophy as an undergraduate student. So, between 18 and 22. And I was just intrigued with the questions. I really felt drawn to a discipline that would ask about how do we know things? How do we become persons? How do we have social, moral, and political commitments? So I was just fascinated. I got bit by the philosophical bug early, and it has stayed with me. I get as excited teaching some of the texts that I have been reading since I was an undergraduate. So for, oh my gosh, 40 years now, I still get excited reading those texts. And I think philosophy has been so wonderful for me. I want to make it available to my students. I want them to be able to fall in love with this discipline, with this way of asking questions and exploring reality and exploring our own selves and figuring out who we are and how we're going to show up in the world. So I believe that philosophy is remarkably useful in everyday life, and it's remarkably useful in figuring out how to live a meaningful life. And I fear that with so much emphasis on the science and technology and engineering disciplines, that we're not paying as much attention to the art of living. Living is an art. It involves skills, but it involves different kinds of arts that if we're only tending to part of our development, we're going to have generations of young people to older people who really don't know how to confront suffering or loss or joy. It's not a mathematical formula. It's not a calculus. It's a very imprecise, not science, but art.
Yeah, no, I think that's the biggest fear I think I have within society today. And looking at a lot of my friends where they're so, especially in their 20s, when they're just starting to build up their careers, they're just trying to figure out what their career is going to look like. And we're so focused on that we forget to develop ourselves in so many other ways. We forget to develop ourselves emotionally when it comes to being adults, to figure out relationships, to figure out friendships, to see even the the place that we want to live in. The country may not be the place that we want to be in, but somehow we're so focused on the career aspect because that's where we think we're going to end up for the next 20, 30, 40 years. And then we completely forget about all the other areas that we're going to need to be also have figured out when it comes to not even romantic relationships, but the friendly relationships that we have, the people that we want to have around us, and maybe our family aspect is still something that we want to discover. So I think that's the biggest thing that I have in today's society, is sort of worried about how we're going to achieve that balance between career and life and that work life balance that I think we're all pretty much suffering from in this day and age.
Oh, I think it's right. And what you say. And I'm just so acutely aware. So I've been a college professor for nearly 30 years now. So seeing the ways in which my students are so worried about sort of who they're going to be, what they're going to be. And that career piece is such a huge part of it, particularly in countries like ours that are Western, that are industrialized, that are fairly rich and developed.
Mhm.
And for me, one of the things I say to students about how I'm trying to disrupt that is when I meet somebody for the first time, you're chit chatting. The one question I never ask them is, so what do you do? I always ask them, how do you like to spend time?
Mhm.
But that whole thing that we think that our worth is so connected to our career is just it's horrible because work is never going to be able to convey some of the important values that we need to live as perhaps an adult child of elders, as a parent, as a sibling, as a friend. Again, it's an art that
Mhm.
takes time, trial, and error. And I think that so many of us become impatient. We want to feel mature. So we want to, be fully fledged and leave our parents behind and embark on these great careers. And oh my gosh, we might not be ready for that at all on so many accountings. That you have a degree in something doesn't mean that you're going to be equipped to be able to live well in the sort of tangled mess that human life is.
Mhm. No, I think it's a really big thing. And I also have noticed a lot of people when they're sort of meeting someone the first time, the first thing that they ask is, what do you do? And I've become really aware of the fact that, especially when I meet someone for the first time, their first point is to ask me what I do. And I say that I'm a freelancer, that I'm working freelance at the moment. And then their viewpoint is the fact that, oh, so you're unemployed. Also, you're connected to not working, or it's connected to not working enough or not being enough because you're not working the full-time job that sort of everyone expects you to do by the time you're 20, 26, 27. And it's the most miserable way of thinking that I think a lot of people, and I think especially students as well, because I'm still studying at the moment, and then there's that viewpoint of, oh, you're 26 and you're still studying. It's like it's
Oh, the
connected.
perpetual student, right? I mean, so then
Yeah.
they're going to slot you into another pigeonhole instead of saying we should all be perpetual students in some way. We should
Mhm.
never, ever want to stop learning. And we should be willing to explore places, even surprising ones, where we can learn. But we're oftentimes so unwilling to put ourselves in situations where we don't already know. And how tragic is that? I think that so
Mhm.
many of us are terrified of not even failing, but maybe just looking a little foolish or being slightly embarrassed. I think every CEO should have to put him, her, or themselves into a position where they know nothing about whatever it is. And to be a novice again, to be an apprentice again, to learn how to learn again. Because I think, I'm going to be 59. And I feel like, oh, I could really become set in my ways, except that I'm surrounded by 18 to 22-year-olds 9 months out of the year where they teach me so much. I learn about what music they like, what kind of political protests they're involved with, what they're worried and concerned about, what their dreams and aspirations are. I feel so fortunate that I have been connected to younger people
Mhm.
because it gives me a vantage point in talking to people older than me when they say, well, these Generation Z kids, they're entitled, they don't want to work, or what's wrong with the millennials? I mean, every generation does this, but there's been such sharpness about, your generation that
Mhm.
it's really grossly unfair. And so I feel like, you know what? I spend more time with these generations than, the old codgers complaining about it. So, I swat them back to say, well, let me tell you what these kids are doing. Let me tell you what they are handling. You went to school and you could just go to school full time. I have students who are working full time jobs and going to school full time jobs. Don't be telling me that these kids are entitled and not working hard. It's like, you have no standing in any of this, back
Mhm.
off. But
Yeah.
there's so many misunderstandings. And that's been true between every generation, but I think everything gets amplified with social media.
Oh yes.
Oh
Yes, I think
yes. Oh
that plays
yes.
that plays a very big role, and I think it definitely has a lot to do with how every generation views the generation after us. Like for me, the way that I view the generation after me, which is the 16-year-olds now that are 10 years ago where I was in that position. And then there's that whole idea of, okay, they're just mucking about, they're playing around, but they're also trying to figure out where they were. And 10 years ago, I was in that position, figuring out where I stood. And I think as we get older, we really forget that. We really forget a lot of the um, moral questions that we're asking ourselves. The where do you want to be? What do you want to be when you grow up? Kind of pressure that we got from parents, that we got from grandparents, that we got from teachers, universities, even expecting us to know what we want to do by the time we're 18.
Oh, I
And
know. And that's the worst thing ever. If I had done what I was going to do when I was 18, I think I'd be a practicing attorney and I wouldn't be happy.
yeah.
So, how is it? One of the things I loved about philosophy is the way that it recognizes the importance of self-knowledge. And self-knowledge is one of these categories that has been popularized in self-help and then it gets made fun of. Oh, it's just navel gazing. It's self-absorption.
Mhm.
And for me to talk about self-knowledge as a philosophical concept, it's a matter of knowing what are your moral principles, your values, your non-negotiables,
Mhm.
what are your weaknesses, what are your vulnerabilities. And if you don't know yourself in some very deep kind of way, then you're going to be at a social disadvantage, you're going to be at a professional disadvantage. But the thing about self knowledge is that it's fundamentally relational. I learn more about me by hearing from others how they see and experience me than I
Mhm.
do just then by turning my, little introspection microscope to interrogate myself internally. So self-knowledge is one of these great categories that's just been it's been mocked so endlessly. And I think, no, 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 no.
Mhm.
I want for my students when they take an ethics class from me to be able to say, you know what, I figured out maybe what my top 10 moral values are, or how I would want others to see me. To ask a young person, how would you want, and then pick people who are important to them. So maybe a parent, a grandparent, a teacher, a coach. How would you want that person to describe you? And it's oftentimes so interesting
Mhm.
because they have to think about, wow, what would I want to be known for? That I'm loyal, that I'm hardworking, that I'm the last one out on the field practicing because I want to make sure I can contribute to my team, or that I stand aside. I don't need to be the all-star, but I want other people to shine on a team. All these sorts of things. And that's that whole piece of moral development that
Mhm.
just really gets, I don't know, are we supposed to swipe left or swipe right when we aren't interested in something?
Swipe left.
Okay, so that's,
Yeah.
I'm going to my left, swiping left. And, I want to say, no.
Yeah. And we forget that a lot. And I think we forget to be, I think, especially now, I've really connected self-critique with bullying. And I've really connected with, okay, I'm bullying myself, or I'm making fun of myself, or I'm mocking myself, or other people are being, doing critical analysis of me and sort of how I am as a character. And I'm taking it the wrong way. But that's my issue, taking it the wrong way, because I connect it with seeing it as bullying. And I connect it with seeing as people not really taking me seriously, especially when you're going as a 20-year-old coming into career force and starting out, and you're suddenly faced with all these job prospects that you're signing up for, realizing that you probably have no business signing up for half of the jobs that you're wanting to apply for because they're expecting 5 years experience to begin with. But then you're faced with the rejection of so many different careers saying that, okay, you don't have the skills that we need. You don't have the skills that we're looking for. And that's the most disheartening thing that you can say. And that I would take in as being, okay, is it my issue not having the skills that's required, or is it them not really seeing the value that I have? And then that questions a whole lot of the self-worth as well when you go into the workforce, when you sort of try to understand how other people see you, how you try to not take it seriously, but you're also like, okay, this is something I probably do need to work on.
I think there are so many different issues in there to untangle, though.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just not fair for a job to expect 5 years experience for someone fresh out of school. I mean, that's just a silly, inappropriate requirement.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that jobs feel like they can do that when there's a labor glut, where there are more people who want jobs than there are positions available. So, I mean, they can be really picky and choosy. And I think it's hard to struggle with job opportunities where they don't know what they want.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, we know we want someone to do this. And it isn't until they see a particular person that has what they think they want that they're like, oh, aha. So, I mean, that has nothing to do with any particular applicant.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's the piece, though, I think that it's very hard to take criticism. So as a writer, I send a lot of things out for submission, and oftentimes they're anonymously reviewed. An anonymous review is just a lot of cover for saying really mean things that you wouldn't otherwise say. And so my when I review manuscripts, I always say that my identity can be revealed, that there's nothing that I would put in an anonymous review that I wouldn't say to someone.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very hard when we get rejected to be able to sort out what's a legitimate limitation to my application packet. No. So if they need somebody who's fluent in Spanish and I barely get out of high school Spanish and I'm saying, donde el baño, versus they need someone fluent, that's a legitimate, concern.
Yeah.
But if I've got the sense it's got to do with the fact that I'm a woman, I'm a younger person, I'm of a certain race, if I'm a certain sexual orientation, or I have an actual disability or perceived disability, it gets really hard to untangle what's, a legitimate reason that my application doesn't move forward and what's an illegitimate one. But what I always worry about is that because we can't always differentiate those two, a lot of people are just going to say, well, it's my fault. There's something wrong with me. And that's the move I always want to block, because no one's self-worth should hinge on someone else's decisions about my ability to do a job. But to go back to the earlier part of our conversation, so what do you do? That's where so much of our self-worth gets pegged.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm rejected for a job, the candidate, am not just rejected. It's me, the person. So therefore, there's something wrong with me, rather than saying there's something wrong with the system. The system is set up to benefit some people and not other people. But some of us get so good. And I think this is gendered, and I think it's raced, and it's classed as well.
Mm-hmm.
It gets easier to make that turn of, it's my fault because there's something wrong with me because I'm not good enough.
Yep.
And so
No.
how do we try to stop that momentum? It snowballs. And then before you know it, I have absolutely no sense of self-worth because I've been rejected for the last 15 jobs, or, the last 15 journals have rejected my work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think, we definitely have a lot of positions when it comes to sort of understanding, separating how other perceive you is not how you're supposed to perceive yourself. And I think we get lost in that so well. Now, before we get a little bit more sidetracked, I'd love to get to know maybe some of your interests and maybe some recommendations that you have as well by playing a little icebreaker to help us get warmed up.
Okay, in case we're not warmed up already, but okay, Dina, go.
Now, do you have a favorite book that you could share with us?
I'm going to cheat and say I have a favorite series of books.
Oh, do it. Yes.
So the author is Louise Erdrich, and she's a Native American writer, and she has written more than a dozen books about connected families over the 100 years of, what could legitimately be called European colonization of America.
Yeah.
And they're absolutely beautifully read and different senses of time. But what's always crucial, what's always central is family relationships and how individuals develop as particularly family members. So it's a series that just is amazing.
Okay. No, that sounds really interesting. Is there a name of the series?
I would just look at Louise Erdrich, Erdich. First
Okay.
name Louise. I think the first book was The Beet Queen. Beet as in the vegetable, Beet.
Okay. Wow. No,
So
I
it's
love.
not necessarily a tight series. It's not like there's sequential because the stories, they cross back and forth between different times where I can't remember whether we're reading about the grandmother or is this the grandchild at this point, but it's all about those connections within horrific treatment by the US government, by white settlers, by the Catholic Church. They're stunning.
So is it different perspectives of similar situations or?
Yeah, I mean it's native centric.
Okay.
And so many stories that are told about native US settler culture and conflict are told from the perspective of the settlers, not from those who were dispossessed of their lands.
No, that's an amazing series to look into, and definitely gonna have that as a list for me to look into after the show, because I love the ones that sort of show the perspective and show different perspectives and have the real perspective, not a perspective that society is wanting you to see or a certain group is wanting you to see. The different areas in that I think is incredible to know the truth from what the perceived reality is.
Yeah, and where I live in Minnesota, it's a site of the largest mass lynchings. 38 natives were hung 12
Wow.
miles from where I lived, near the site of one of the largest land grabs by the US government. So to think about the land in this different kind of way, that my college sits on occupied land, it's very poignant, and it's important always to be thinking about place. And her novels really situate place not just as a setting, but place as a character itself in a kind of way.
Oh, no, that's really interesting. No, I'm definitely going to look that book up, because I think it's amazing sort of seeing history in a sense of, okay, how history actually was, not how history is written in books that you sort of are taught in school. And I think school definitely has an impact as to how you see history. I mean, even in Australia, there's so much that happened within Australia that I think a lot of society is not wanting it to be the reality. But because I grew up in New Zealand, so New Zealand has a really great partnership with the Aboriginals in New Zealand, and sort of the communication that is there. When I came to Australia, there's a whole other history that you're sort of just not really having any idea on, or you're not really taught in school. Whereas New Zealand is a huge connection with with the original settlers, and it's amazing to sort of have the viewpoint that I think both sides really aren't really connected with.
I absolutely agree with you.
Yeah, perfect. Now, do you have a movie that you've enjoyed recently that you could share with us?
So I rewatched Wonder Woman. I love the Wonder Woman movie that came out. Was it about 8 years ago?
Oh,
With Gal
quite a while
Gadot?
ago. Yeah, quite a while ago.
I love the original movie, and then I hated the sequel. I thought the sequel was just god awful because here's Wonder Woman with all this power, and what is she going to do? She's going to bring back her love interest. I thought, really? Feminist icon is going to bring back her male love interest? I hated that movie so much after being so excited for the first movie.
Oh, yeah. The first movie
So I
was
love the first
incredible.
movie. The first
Yeah.
movie. Thumbs
Yeah.
down on the second movie.
Yeah, I think the first movie was incredible because it showed how powerful she was. And then she was powerful enough in the second, but her only focus was to bring back the love interest. And I think that was just, yeah, it totally lost the power and empowerment that Wonder Woman really had on, I think, just previous generations, as like all generations as well, sort of had that view on Wonder Woman from comic books, from the animated series, from every other viewpoint. And then suddenly the most recent one, the most recent thing that my generation is going to be seeing it as, oh, her focus is to bring back someone she loves.
I know. Even the strongest woman feminist needs to have her man love.
Yeah.
It was just so disappointing.
Yeah, no, I agree
So
with
bad.
that. I agree
So
with
bad.
that. I think it was completely lost the point of Wonder Woman. So I gave that
Exactly.
one half the marks that I gave the first one.
Well, you're generous in your grading system. That's all I'll say on that.
Well, I'm not a professor, so I don't grade.
There's no curve here.
Now, when it comes to podcasts, do you have any podcasts that you could share with us that you might have an interest in?
So I recently listened to a podcast about Agatha Christie. I loved murder mystery novels growing up. And Agatha Christie, her books have sold, she's number 3 on the list in the world of all time behind the Bible and William Shakespeare. Bible, William Shakespeare, Agatha Christie. So I listened to this whole podcast about Agatha Christie's life, and you know, she kind of had a tough go of it. Her husband was kind of immature and jealous and resentful of her beginning writing success. And one of the reasons why she had so many poisons as the method of murder was because she worked in a pharmacy. So she actually knew what was toxic and everything. And I thought,
Oh, wow.
I love it. And she was such a prolific writer. And so I was just absolutely tickled because I started reading Agatha Christie when I was, just a little twerp. And I still read a lot of murder mysteries. And it was just so utterly charming to learn about this author whom I have long admired.
Yeah, her life is incredible. I actually saw, when I was in London last year, I actually saw The Mousetrap,
Oh,
the actual play. Oh, that
it's
was
good, isn't
It
it?
was so good. It was so incredible how well it was written. And then it got me completely obsessed with actually reading the books and looking into her. And then I love the way that she is so able to have a grab on the audience, but she's not really telling anything. She still has that grab on them. And you can see it 3 or 4 times. You can read it multiple times and you still sort of somehow forget the ending until you get to it.
And then surprise. So are you more Hercule Poirot, Jane Marple, or Tommy and Tuppence?
I'm more Jane Marple. I think my mom and we watched Marple quite often
on the BBC?
Yeah. We watched her, I think it showed up twice a week on TV. And so we watched that whenever it came on. And it was something that could turn up, I think, straight after school. So it was about 4:00 in the afternoon. We're just sitting there and watching it. We're like coming home from school, grabbing lunch, and then we're sitting there and watching it for the rest of the afternoon. And then dinner came on, and then Proa would come on. I know I'm butchered saying the name, so do not hold me on the name.
I'm not gonna. Everyone butchers his name, and then he'd have to remind everyone that he was Belgian, not French.
Yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's his trademark now, so it's good.
Yes, it's good. And that little mustache. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, I know we were well warmed up before, but I hope we're a little bit more warmed up now to deal with the deeper questions that we have planned for today.
Sure. We are warmed up. We are more
We are
than ready.
well warmed up. I think we've gotten halfway through the show.
I think we have, but we're in charge.
Now, I know that everyone has a very different viewpoint as to what parenting is and sort of the aspect that parenting holds on a child's life. Do you have a definition for parenting that you could possibly share with us?
So I need to put the disclaimer out there. I am not a parent. Let me just be clear on that. I have a dog. And anytime I'm teaching a class where we're talking about, young children, there's my hypothetical child, Peg Jr. But I myself do not have children. And I think a parent is not just a biological category. It's not just a legal category. I think that non-biological, non-legal parents can parent children. And so a parent really is someone who very intentionally cares for someone who is younger, who is more vulnerable, who is dependent upon them in some kind of way. And that those relationships of dependency become relationships of interdependency. And so for me, a parent is someone who puts the best interest of the younger person front and center and acts in ways to help that child not just grow and not just to develop, but to thrive. So I kind of put the bar up kind of high
Mhm.
that, parenting, the aim or goal is to help your child thrive. And of course, it gets complicated because if you are a parent and you've got several children, what may be thriving for one child is not thriving for another. So there's that. And I think that, people who parent have to have a certain kinds of patience because development isn't always linear.
Mhm.
It may be 2 steps forward and 47 steps back. And that progress is not always evenly spaced, but maybe sporadic.
Mhm.
But parents, I think parenting is one of the most, I don't use this word lightly, sacred relationships that one can have with another. And as I said, it isn't just biological, it isn't just legal. In
Mhm.
many ways, I think, teachers parent in a kind of way.
Mhm.
Role models, mentors act as kind of a parent in certain ways when they're, giving advice, when they are helping someone pursue goals, or even before pursuing goals, learning how to set goals, how
Mhm.
to set meetable goals, and then how to have those goals that are further out that are harder to reach, but to try to teach how to strive, how to try, how to
Mhm.
handle some adversity or setback, but still continue to move forward.
Mhm.
And so parenting is sacred. And parenting, there's no one size fits all approach. And so it requires an enormous flexibility. But what I will say is I think people get so busy policing and patrolling other people's parenting
Mhm.
that, to go back to the earlier conversation that we had, if you want to devastate someone who is a parent, just make one negative comment about their parenting. Because that becomes so identity conferring because nobody wants to be a bad parent.
Mm.
That's something nobody wants to sign up for. But lots of people get labeled bad parents. And what happens when those parents start believing, well, I am that bad parent?
Mhm.
Then you have trouble. And
Yeah.
it's the child usually who gets harmed by that.
Yeah. No, I think that's very true. And I think you're definitely correct in the terms of parenting is not just a biological or a legal aspect to it. Because my parents, I consider them my legal parents. And I think my sister also considers them legal parents, financial parents. But I think to an aspect, my sister and I, we were each other's emotional parent. We were each other's, we practically felt like we raised each other throughout a lot of the childhood because we were there with each other. And it wasn't just a older sibling, younger sibling relationship. There was a lot of aspects where I was my sister's parent, where I sort of was the one raising her and helping her figure out where she wanted to be emotionally, where she wanted to be in terms of how she wanted to grow herself and how she wanted to develop her own character, because it was the two of us that we trusted for that.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. And I think one of the markers of good parenting is having boundaries, is knowing that I cannot create my child to look identical to me, nor can I create my child and position them in the dreamscape that I have created for them. Here are all my hopes and dreams. And I want Dina to be a CEO by the time she's 35. So I'm going to try to manufacture reality
Mm-hmm.
to make that be the case. So to have boundaries and to let kids have a little bit of failure, to let kids have to experience a little bit of setbacks in order to build. I'm not a huge fan of resilience because I think resilience becomes this catch-all term for we want kids who are somehow marginalized to be resilient to, all the adversities that they face. And I want to say, let's change those adversities so they're not facing them. I don't want some kids to be resilient in the ways that they have to be in order
Mm-hmm.
to survive. At the same time, I think that resilience is important because you have to be able to know that when you fall down, you can get back up. And that isn't to say you're going to spring up. That isn't to say you're going to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but it may mean you know how to reach out your hand to have someone else help you up. That's resilience too. But I
Mm-hmm.
think resilience is getting coded these days as being this kind of self-reliance. I can do everything on my own. Look at me. I'm the emergency kit. I don't need anything.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
helpful. Not
No.
helpful.
No, I think I hate the term resilience as well. I've heard it quite often on this show. I've heard it quite often on another show that I host as well. And it's become a term like, okay, the child needs to toughen up, or it builds character if the child is sort of faced with resilience. In my head, I'm like, well, why can't we stop those aspects so the child doesn't have to force to be grown up quicker than they already are? I mean, society is really holding us to that expectation that by the time we're, like I said earlier, the time we're 18, we're supposed to know exactly where we want to be in life. Why can't we create that aspect where you're free to try whatever? You're free to sort of still try every little aspect, try to build your own character outside of school, outside of learning things in a room with 30 other kids. Why can't we sort of build that aspect where we're exploring the world a little bit more, where we're allowed to explore the world, where finances aren't a big thing that's stopping us from exploring what kind of things we're wanting to be in the world? And there's that whole question of why can't we just allow them to figure out where they want to be instead of setting up those standards of, okay, they're supposed to know what they want to be, but we're not going to show them how to explore, how to figure out what they want to be.
Right. And I think that's the key thing, because on the one hand, to let kids figure out what they want, hypothetical Peg Jr. might want to have jelly beans, candy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so I would not be a good parent if, Peg Jr. just always ate all that sort of stuff or didn't want to go to school, didn't want to learn. So, I mean, you need to have some boundaries there. But even within those boundaries, there's so much room for exploration and for trying things out and deciding, I don't like them. I have a lot of respect for my parents, for my friends who are parents who say, I don't know what she's interested in. We thought we would try soccer, football this fall and see if she likes it. She said she might want to try piano. So, we're going to try, because there's an after school music program, because you get some parents who just start channeling their kids and their interests so that they narrow. So what happens when, you've got a 16-year-old who's only been playing hockey as their source of outlet, their identity gets so wedded to their being a hockey player, and they don't make the traveling team, or they don't make the team at college. And suddenly you've got an 18-year-old who's going to experience what I call an existential concussion, because all the ways of making sense and organizing her life and making meaning and value and friendships and relationships, that's all come crashing down. And so to have an 18-year-old who's suddenly facing this crisis of, who am I? What am I? I don't know what to do if I can't play my sport or can't play my instrument. I mean, all these different things. And, I do hold parents responsible for those situations, because that's a lot of pressure for a young person to put on themselves and to have others put on them, because they don't always know how to yet balance and say, you know what, I don't care what this group of people thinks about. I don't care what their opinion is of me, because I don't think they're the right kinds of people that, have opinions that should value to me, versus I just want to have everyone like me and approve of me, because I wouldn't know what to do if someone didn't.
And I think it's also the viewpoint of, I want to make other people proud. I want to see, okay, if I don't make this, especially if you get a bad grade, and I think grades in school are a really big thing. I mean, they're a big thing. I get that they're needed to sort of help with the growth, but now we've made it a competition with each other. In Australia, we have something called NAPLAN, where it's like the national-wide test that sort of bases where the school is nationwide. And then that's held accountable. Okay, for me growing up, because I was in a house where English is my first language, but because my mom, she speaks Malay as her first language, I was put into English second language classes for about 3 years, and I wasn't allowed to take the NAPLAN test, because that exempt me from that. And I'm like, well, English is my first language. So is like 5 other people in that class. And then there was that aspect of, okay, because I could have that potential to lower the national average for the school, which
we're going to
lowers the
kick
funding.
you out of the test.
Yeah, exactly.
That's just absurd.
So
we're doing the same thing over here in the US, by the way. Anything bad that you do, we're doing it worse over here. And that's not just backwards bragging, but
that's making me seem a little bit better. But it's an insane thing of how much we're sort of how much of the aspects, and kids don't know. Like, I didn't know when I was 11 or 12 the fact that that's the reason I'm putting those classes. That's the reason why I'm like, I feel like I'm dumbed down. Everything's dumbed down for me. I'm like, I think I can spell cat by now. I'm like 11. I think I can spell that by now. And it wasn't until my mom noticed, I think the second year, that I was put into that class. And every year for about 3 other more years, I was still put in the same classes.
Wow.
And it's an insane question as to, okay, well, how much of it is what they're thinking? How much are we putting on ourselves with the amount of pressure that I'm putting on myself to prove that English is my first language? And it not being understood as, okay, I can take the test. I'm actually fine to take the test. And I think one of the years that I did take the test, I aced it. I got 99 out of 100.
And then they're probably scratching their heads like,
Yeah, maybe that ESL class did actually do you some good.
Rather than, oops, we made a mistake. No, let's pat ourselves on the back for our ESL class being so good.
Yeah.
But I'm totally with you about the pressure of grades. So I this year changed my grading policies, because I teach 18 to 22-year-olds, so what we call undergraduate college in the US. And they're also worried about their grades, because scholarships depend on them. I've got to have a certain grade point average. I've got this scholarship that blah, 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 blah. So here's what I do. I say, you all have A's. You start the semester with an A, and now you're going to earn it backwards by doing all the work that I ask you to do to a certain level of competence and achievement. And you've got to abide by the policies of the class. But you have the A right now. Keep it. Preserve it. What you claim to cherish. Work to keep it. It's yours to lose, rather than saying, okay, well, if you do all these things, then you'll get an A, because there's a gap there, right? I tell them this. And so I'm curious about how they respond to that. The ones who have talked to me about it said they really liked it because it became clear to them that they had responsibility, that they couldn't blame me like, oh, she doesn't like how I write, or I don't agree with her, so she punishes me. No, 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 no. I'm telling you, you've got the grade of A. Now keep it. But I've had students who have ended up with a grade of C because they just skipped classes or didn't hand in the assignments. And you had something you said you wanted and you let it slip through your fingers. What's the takeaway lesson here? So, even in my grading scheme, I'm putting a moral of the story in there. You've got to work to keep what you claim to love and that you say has value. How do you value what you say you value? Well, you do what you have to do. You
Yeah.
take responsibility. And they're always kind of like, you're up to something. You're tricking us. I'm not tricking you.
Yeah.
This is a great life lesson. You got to preserve, you've got to take care of what you love. And you love your A grades. But it should also free them. I say this should free you to learn more in this class because you're not worrying about pleasing me. I'm telling you, you've got the grade of A. So participate, throw yourself into it, take risks because students are risk averse now in teaching. So when they don't want to disagree with me. No one ever wants to sound stupid. No one ever wants to show that they didn't understand the reading. It's like all of that can go away because you all are peers. You all have a grade of A.
Yeah.
It's working for me, and it takes pressure off me because I say to them, you're going to get me more unvarnished. I'm going to give you honest feedback on your work, always aiming towards how can you do better? Because even when you get a grade of A, you can always improve. So think about that. And they're like,
It's a good point. I think that's a big thing when it comes to the transition of high school and college as well, is because the way that you're taught in high school is to learn. The teacher's always right. Learn from the teacher. They'll tell you, you're not thinking for yourself and you're not taught to think for yourself. You're taught, memorize this, get tested on this, and you go through. But when you get to university, and I think that's why a lot of people don't really go to university. I mean, other than the financial aspect to it, a lot of them just choose not to because they're like, oh, it's still school. It's still learning something. You're still learning exactly what you did in high school and you're just sort of doing the same thing all around. But the first time that I went to university, the first class that I got given a glue stick, color markers, and go to a board and pin what you think that what your viewpoint of yourself is. And that was the first class. So like there's different areas there's different boards with different colors that say, okay, you're this kind of personality or you're this kind of personality. Go stick your name as to where you think you are.
oh, fun.
And we had a discussion on that. And we had a moral question onto that as to how we view ourselves. But also we spoke to the person beside us for 5 minutes. And then they got to
you
change.
spoke to the person next to you in a physical space?
Yes.
That's the other piece that's been missing is the social skills. What happens when you are having a face-to-face discussion where you come to know each other's names? I mean, the magic that happens in those kinds of spaces has nothing to do with a professor lecturing at you about, here are 4 sets of moral theories, and today we're going to be taking on the deontological blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
And then you have to sit there and memorize all of those philosophies that are stuck there. And you're not learning anything because you only learn what you've been taught. And that's the thing that when I was in high school and I was like signing up for university, I was questioning, should I go to university at all? Because I'm just going to be stuck there learning the same way. And the minute that I was there, it was such a different environment that I felt myself actually wanting to discuss something, actually wanting to put my hand up in class and talk to other people and have those discussions. When it comes to high school, I think a lot of kids are sort of stuck in that viewpoint and that's why we're so focused on friends. And this is honestly going to be my opinion. I think that's why we're so focused on the friendship aspect to it in high school, is because we're not we're getting to explore friendships in a space. But in school, when we sit there in a classroom, we're not taught to explore, we're taught to understand, we're taught to memorize. And that's where the lack of interest comes in. When it comes to that moral aspect, when it comes to building your character, is that we're seeing our character from what our friends are and who we want our friends to see us as.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. So 2 points. I'll see if I remember both of them. One of which is one of my favorite philosophers is Michel Montaigne. He was a French philosopher in the 1500s. So he's
Mhm.
living in the Bordeaux region, and France was undergoing a civil war where the Catholics were chasing the Protestants all around. And
Mhm.
he writes these series of essays, and one of the pieces he writes is about education. And it's my centerpiece in how I think about my teaching. And he said, the best teachers treat their students as treasured guests. So what does it mean to teach to consider a student a treasured guest? So different from here's somebody I'm going to fill your brain, because the other distinction he says is that there's a vast difference between having a well-filled mind.
Mhm.
So here's the lecture, here's all the material, I'm going to stuff it in you, versus having a well-formed mind. Now, knowledge in that narrow sense of it's important to know the temperature at which water boils so that you don't stick your hand in a pan and
Mhm.
burn yourself. Knowledge plays an important role in our life, but in so many other areas of our life, having a well-formed mind, one that is adaptable, one that can make interesting associations, one that can reach back in time, one that can imagine both a future and then the means to realize that, having that well-filled mind. And one of the things he says is that we need to marry learning. We need to have an ongoing, sustained, loving relationship with learning. And I think school takes the love of learning out for a lot of people, and they never get it back. So these are people who never want to read another book again, never want to have certain kinds of information given to them, or say, oh, I can't do math, and just kind of panic, or
Mhm.
oh, I can't, no, 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 I can't, no, study poetry, no, 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 no. So how do our educational systems set up people to be learners, which is so important, say, for example, in a democracy? If we live in democratic countries where we are electing our officials, I want people to be voting on the basis of knowledge. I want them to know. I don't want them to just have preferences or opinions. No, I want knowledge. I want people to know candidates' positions. So that's the
Mhm.
first point to what you said. And the second point about friends. So one of my other favorite philosophers is Aristotle in ancient Greek. So around 350 BCE.
Mhm.
He argued that the most important moral relationship a person has is one of friendship, not romantic love or marriage. And not good reasons why, because he thought women weren't fully rational, so were not capable of full moral value. And so for him, the paragon of relationships is having what he calls a virtue friend,
Mhm.
someone whom you love because of their character. And two perfect or virtue friends, they make each other better. They're moral mirrors to each other. They have traits that the other wants to emulate, because Aristotle says humans are social creatures, and who would choose to live alone when you can live in the company of the right sort of people?
Mhm.
And I think, in high school years, we get so busy trying out different friends because we're trying to figure out who we are. And oftentimes we hope that if we find the right friendship group, suddenly everything's going to click and I'm going to find myself and I'm going to be totally, just warmly enveloped by people like me. We all want to belong in some kind of way.
Mhm.
But sometimes we do get connected up with the wrong people who don't fit us, but then we become contortionists trying to make ourselves fit into what it is we think that these others expect of us. And we can do a lot of violence, moral, psychological, spiritual violence to ourselves when we try to fit in places where we really don't. But
Mhm.
that's a kind of moral maturity to know where, what, I really don't fit in over there. And I'm not saying these people are bad or wrong or terrible, but I'm just saying they're not my peeps. I don't belong. I'm more interested in these things. But it's not unusual to see, young people kind of cycle through different friendship circles. I mean, I'm always amazed when I meet people my age and they say, well, yeah, I was hanging out with my elementary school friend that I've known since I was 6. I'm like, whoa, good for you. That's amazing.
Mhm.
Whereas, it's complicated by the fact that so many of us have to move for work. We don't have that same geographic proximity, but what we have are various social media in their place. So, I mean, it is easy to stay connected, but being connected isn't the same as having an ongoing friendship, which is a lot of work and takes a lot of effort and
Mhm.
brings great joy. You get, Aristotle says you get the highest kinds of pleasures in being with your virtue friends. And I think that is so right, that you can't lead a healthy, flourishing life if you don't have friends. And in this time of isolation and loneliness, I mean, here in the US, we're talking about an epidemic of loneliness that, since the pandemic, so many people feel so isolated and disconnected from each other. I mean, it can really just bring me to my knees when I think about the ways that some individuals have lost communities. And
Yeah.
now where do they stand? Because they're not standing with the people who were always there for them.
Mhm. It's a I really like to sort of consider the importance of that well-formed mind idea that you were talking about a little bit earlier, because I think we definitely don't use our brains enough. We use it to do what our bosses tell us to do, or use it to figure out a structure that needs to be reformed, or a essay that needs to be written a little bit better. But we never, I think one of my lecturers, he's teaching us currently how to create a debate within our essays, how to sort of have both sides of the argument
Yes,
and talk
yes.
about both sides. Because right now we're just trying to prove a point, but we're not trying to argue that point as to, okay, you need to understand what you're trying to argue for and what point you're trying to come across. How can you do that if you don't know the other side to that?
Exactly right. I'm with your professor 100%, because you do always have to ask, does the other side get something right? Even though I so strongly disagree with it, is there common ground there? Can we split a difference? Are there more than two sides? What I say to my students is there aren't two sides to every issue. There's probably about 47. Now,
Mhm.
how do we go and, find the other 45 when, we're so used to just hearing two? But that's absolutely right. And how do we take that same kind of dynamic to our own self when we become wedded to, well, I'm just a person who doesn't like this, or I'm
Yeah.
someone who always has to? Because it turns out we're trying to prove points to ourselves all the time, as much
Yes.
as we're trying to, prove points to someone else. Am I right on that? I think I am.
Yes, I think you've hit the nail on the head right there. I think we're always just trying to prove where we're going right. We're always trying to prove
Yeah.
ourselves that we're on the right path. We're doing the right thing. But we're never trying to be like, okay, but what would we be doing if we chose another side? What would we do how would we react if we chose to do this other option?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
career paths, like what we do, the whole what if sort of plays into a huge part
Right.
as
And
to,
what ifs can make you miserable?
yes.
What ifs can make you miserable, um, as can if onlys. People who engage in if only everything were all set up, then I would do this. If only my parent were more supportive, I'd do this. And if only thinking can be absolutely devastating. But I think I think we humans, so I'll make a comment about human nature. I'm not sure I'm right on this, but I think we tend to want certainty. We want certainty.
Hmm.
And that uncertainty, I think we all have an uncertainty threshold. How much uncertainty can we tolerate before we're just going to decide on something? Because I can't keep weighing. I can't go this way and go that way. And I think too many of us in our quest for certainty settle too soon.
Yeah.
We'll make something certain. We will take certainty over uncertainty. And another one of my favorite philosophers is William James. And he defines faith as the following: faith has nothing to do with, believing in a God, a set of religious tenets or anything like that. He says faith is just a willingness to live on maybes and possibilities where the results aren't certified or guaranteed in advance.
Wow.
So faith is just a willingness to live on maybes and possibilities when you don't know the outcome. And how willing are we to try to lead a life of faith like that? And he's got really mundane examples to demonstrate it. He says, imagine you're out hiking and you get lost and you got to choose. Am I going to go to the left? Am I going to go to the right? There's a chasm there. He says, you got to act as if you can jump over that chasm. Because if you don't believe, if you are unwilling to try, you're not going to fortify yourself. You might drag your foot some, and then you're going to topple over. So what would it be like if we lived in the world in a kind of way that didn't always just demonize uncertainty? Because uncertainty, you're just ambivalent or you're being wishy-washy. You haven't made up your mind. Why haven't you committed yet? And instead say, you know what? I'm just going to be okay with this uncertainty. None of us knows what's coming in the next minute, but we act as if we think we should or that we can. And so to dwell in that uncertainty is transformative. And that doesn't, to me, it makes a person become more open to possibility. The more uncomfortable you are with uncertainty, the more open you are to possibilities. And you don't know whether one of those possibilities might be incredibly transformative. It could be bad. It could be not great. But if you also have some confidence that, you know what, I'm not sure what's going to happen here, but either way, I'll be okay. That's pretty empowering.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think that I love the uncertainty, and I think especially being sort of starting out a career, starting into a career, into the workforce, I have that availability to have that uncertainty. But I can definitely say that if my dad lost his job now, that uncertainty would absolutely destroy him. And it's definitely, as you get sort of set in your ways, is sort of understand that, okay, this is my position, this is my role in the world, this is what I'm going to do with my life. The minute that changes, that whole possibility is just, well, how much can I really handle? And you're definitely right. I think we all have that stress level as to how much we're able to take on and how much we're willing to just leave it all to fate and just say, okay, I'll try my best, but if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out.
Yeah, and it's not even leaving it to fate for James. It's taking action. Faith is always taking action where you don't know the result is going to be. It isn't just, I'm going to sit back and wait and see what happens. I'm going to wait for me to win the lottery. Well, good luck on that. If I don't buy a ticket, right? That you've got to meet the universe, be in the universe in a way that you got to be putting in action. That willingness is always connected to action. So it's very active. So in times of economic uncertainty, we're seeing downsizing and redundancy, and people who thought this is going to be my lifelong career to say, wait a minute, I thought I had another 15, 20 years of working in me. I've got to reinvent myself. Okay, I don't know what this looks like, but I keep moving. I keep going.
Yeah.
It's always action. And that, that's taking a very proactive approach. Even though you don't know, you can't guarantee your own result because you can't manufacture reality. No. But you can meet reality and you can adjust to it and maybe change a little bit of it, but you can't completely manufacture reality. And I think some people become so willful. They think if I just keep doing this, I'm finally going to get what I want. And so one of the things we say in Alcoholics Anonymous is one of the definitions of insanity is doing the same thing repeatedly, expecting different results.
That's a very true point. You're just going to be stuck in that little loophole of doing the same thing, sort of expecting the same result. Yeah. I don't think we question that enough, especially as a societal aspect. We don't question, okay, if I don't make any changes to my life, nothing's really going to change. But also, if we make so many changes, so much of the uncertainty comes through. And are we willing to go through that uncertainty of trying something new, being in a new place, traveling to a new destination? Are we okay to do that? Or is that too much? And that's where I think a lot of people get stagnant, because we're like, okay, this is our life. My life isn't too bad so far, so why not keep it going? It's boring.
familiar. It's comfortable. I know it.
Yeah. It's a little boring, but I think I can handle the boring to know that I know where my paycheck is coming from every day. But I think so much of the world, but we don't live to work. And I think the whole idea of living to work or work to live, that sort of philosophical question is like, are we working in order to live a life, or are we living because we're wanting to work?
Yeah. And I think to kind of bring back the parenting part of this discussion, I think so many parents want for their kids to have it better than they did.
Yeah.
That was definitely my parents' attitude. I mean, my dad was dirt poor, absolutely nothing. The guy had nothing growing up, and he didn't want that for us. And he worked hard, and he, got some lucky breaks and everything like that. And I think so many parents want to do better for their kids. And so, for me to be blithely talk about, embrace uncertainty and all that, when I have 3 kids to support and maybe an elderly parent, that that uncertainty is always there, though. There's always some, because things change. You can lose your job at any point. And so when that happens, yes, of course I would feel a full-blown panic. I have all these people relying on me. I'm not sure what it's going to be. But what I know is that I can't stand still. I can't just get caught up and I can't believe I lost my job, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I've got to keep taking steps. And that's really what James is saying. You got to keep moving. Even though you don't know what's at the end there. The one thing you know is you can't just stay still. You'll never get found when you're out hiking if you just stay in the exact same place and nobody's coming for you.
Yeah.
But
I think
people find themselves in this position all the time.
Yeah. No, that's very true. Especially when it comes to parenting as well. You're having that idea of, okay, I'm having to take care of this many people. So many people I'm responsible for, and I have to make sure are okay. But also, I need to improve my life. I need to figure out where I want to do. And I think, especially for my dad, he's got 2 older children who are adults now, and now he's sort of able to figure out, I actually like going hiking, I actually like going camping. And now he's bought himself an old beat up car that can now go camping with him, that he can now add a tent in the back of it. And now he's figuring out his own life and his own hobbies and building up his himself outside of work, because he's been working his entire life, and now he's found something to do on the weekends that he really enjoys. So it's that to it as well that I sort of see as a huge inspiration to me, being like, okay, that means I can somehow find something that I may not have a hobby yet, but I know that it's still out there and I can still discover it at any time. And I think that's all that kids are really wanting, to see that person, to find that person who's going to show them that there's life outside the mundane. There's life outside of the whole. Then that's why they look at friends. They look at other people who do something a lot more exciting than they do, because they're trying to figure out what their excitement is.
Yeah, and I think it's a both and. So sort of the ways in which, so here comes social media again. If you were just to evaluate someone's life based on what they post, most people only post sort of the best moments. And so then there you are scrolling through, you're like, oh my God, they're on another trip. Oh, look, they just bought a new boat. As you're scrolling up, you're like, well, why can't I have that? So, I mean, that kind of comparing comes in. But the other thing is, and maybe this is a consequence of my getting older, is that there's beauty and joy in the mundane. And, appreciating simple things. because oftentimes we don't appreciate something until we no longer have it. So we don't appreciate sort of the calmness of our life until some tropical storm blows through it. And
Yeah.
then we're willing to go to any lengths to try to get that calmness back, even as maybe we did feel a little boring. I mean, there's an argument that there's at least two kinds of boredom.
Mhm.
There's the boredom that just is stultifying. So that means it just wears you down and just makes you kind of go, ugh. Or there's the boredom that's fructifying or productive. So that
Mhm.
when I don't have to worry about certain things, when I've taken care of business, when I can just have the time to be able to, oh, maybe find new hobbies, or, oh, it turns out I like reading these kinds of books, or I'm interested in that. That boredom can lead to a kind of happiness. And this one philosopher, Bertrand Russell, said that, we're busier than ever, but we're also more bored. And I think we see that there's kind of a
Yeah.
busyness Olympics is like, I worked 13 hours today and blah, 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 blah,
Mhm.
always playing that. And then, spending their non-working times maybe at home, but everyone's on their own piece of technology. But then they'll say they're bored. Oh, I can't believe I just wasted 2 hours on
Yeah.
TikTok.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've so focused on, because we see social media and we see our phone as being some sense of relief, some sense of, okay, this is what we get to sort of waste a couple of hours where we could be doing, I don't know, we could be maybe going for a hike, we could be going for a walk, could be doing other things. But we see that as being the easiest access to get to some sort of excitement, watching other people be excited about life and watching YouTube videos of people going hiking, because that's equivalent to us sort of experiencing that excitement as well.
Right. Yeah. So kind of secondhand excitement. I think a
Exactly.
lot of people don't know how to generate their own excitement or joy, and that we now live in a culture of fast food. I think we kind of live in a culture of fast pleasure or secondhand pleasure or drive-through pleasure. I mean, pick up whatever
Yes.
part of that bad metaphor you want. And
Yeah.
that should be nourishing in a kind of way. And it's really not.
No.
Not in the same way as, going out on a hike yourself and feeling the sun on your face and, feeling your muscles burn because you did get up that hill and you weren't sure you were going to, and you're
Yeah.
proud of yourself,
Yeah.
right? A sense of
Exactly.
achievement or accomplishment. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Now, thank you so much, Peg, for coming onto the show
Oh,
today.
thanks for having me. This has been great.
I absolutely loved talking about this. And I know we definitely did get sidetracked a couple of times, but I love the way that we're able to just sort of create these topics that hopefully make not just the both of us think, but the rest of the audience as well. And hopefully allow us to share some of our own personal experiences when it comes to our own moral development and moral dilemmas that we sort of face on an everyday basis.
Yeah. Thank you.
Now,
Thank you for this.
if our audience would like to learn a little bit more about you, is there places they're able to go to learn a bit more?
Two easiest places to find me. One is my website is pegoconnorauthor.com. That's all
Perfect.
one word. There are going to
Yeah.
be liner notes for this, so I don't have to spell it
Yes.
out.
Yes. There'll be show notes down below.
Good. I'm afraid I would fail that spelling bee right now. So pegoconnorauthor.com. And the other thing is I have a series on PsychologyToday.com called Philosophy Stirred, Not Shaken. And so those are, relatively short pieces about whatever happens to be bouncing around in this head of mine. So I just wrote a piece about shame. Can shame really be good for us? There's this whole argument that shame is good for us because it prompts us to change. And I think that's just too convenient. I think that shame doesn't really have much positive value at all. So I
Okay.
regularly post on there, usually, I don't know, 7 or 8 times a year, sometimes more. So
Mhm.
those are the two best places to get a sense of what else I'm up to.
Oh, that's perfect. Well, I'll definitely have the links down below for anyone who wants to access them
Oh,
and look
thanks.
into a little bit more as well. And look at some of the books that you've written as well, especially the most recent one. I think it's called Higher and Friendly
Higher and
Powers.
friendly powers. Yeah,
Yes.
it's about taking that concept back, it appeared originally in the philosopher I mentioned, William James, and higher and friendly powers. He didn't mean God. He meant anything that served as something higher or bigger than your present self, maybe even an imagined better self, moral principles, a sense of human decency, ideals, for some, God. Friendships might be in there. So anything that enables you to take a step towards change.
Oh, that's perfect. I'll definitely find out a little bit more on from your website as well. So I'm going to definitely have those down in the link below for anyone who wants to see them. Thank you again so much, Peg, for coming on to the show.
Oh, thank you,
today.
Dina. Thank you. Thank you for doing this kind of podcast. I really appreciate being a guest, and I appreciate that you are helping people to think about these really interesting, complex issues and to more fully inhabit their lives.
Cool. I hope I'm doing that.
You are doing that. I'm telling you, you're doing that. So good stuff,
Good.
Dina.
Okay, thank you so much. And I hope you guys learned as much as I did when it comes to building moral character and moral development, as well as some other topics we spoke about today. I'll see you all in the next episode.
You've been listening to Raising Parents, the Parenting Science Insights podcast, produced by the Parenting Science Labs, a division of LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. More episodes are available from 10 life management perspectives and can be found by searching LMSL on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and other podcasting apps available on your devices. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating our show, sharing it, and subscribing to our channel, as it helps other people find it so that we can grow and bring you more quality resources. More of our work can be found on our website at pa.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Dina Sargeant. Thanks for tuning in.